Hello and welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Today I will be reviewing the English and British monarchs from 1066 to the present day, summarizing their reigns in a sentence or less, just like I did with the American presidents. I hope you enjoy. Like and subscribe if you do. Starting off with William the Conqueror. Obviously, William the Conqueror is best known for his military record and not necessarily his domestic policy, but he did terraform England to be more French than English since he was a French nobleman who happened to conquer England. William II. Wasn't bright, charming, or competent, a shell of his father. Henry I. A good, solid medieval king, what you'd expect during a medieval time. Stephen. Got the throne for usurping Henry's daughter out of it, and basically just lived during a civil war. Didn't do much, pretty incompetent and forgettable. Henry II. Created the Angevin Empire, expanding England's influence into Western Europe. A really great king. Richard I. Spent only 6 months governing England, most of the other time fighting abroad, such as in the Crusades, therefore is a weak king only because he didn't know how to govern, but he sure knew how to fight. John Lackland, the worst English king, lost a bunch of his lands, destroyed the Angevin Empire, got the Pope mad and his nobles, was forced to sign the Magna Carta. That may be more than one sentence, sorry. Henry III. For a 56-year-long reign, it was extremely underwhelming and he was constantly putting out fires, but he survived, so there's something. Edward I. Longshanks himself, the man who conquered Wales and almost conquered all of Scotland, a brutal, ruthless, and powerful warrior king, one of England's finest. Edward II. The absolute opposite of his father, weak and limp-wristed, lost power because his wife overthrew him. There's more. Edward III. One of England's greatest kings, stabilized monarchical authority, regained land that had been lost, and almost won the 100 Years' War had it not been for the Black Death, which put an asterisk on his greatness. Richard II. A whiny little brat who was overthrown by his own cousins. Enough said. Oh, there's said cousin, Henry IV. Could have been a much more powerful king given his cunning had it not been for the leprosy that destroyed his skin and his life and his reign. Henry V. The JFK of English kings. If he had lived longer, would have been the best. Conquered all of France within a few years. Henry VI. Inherited the insanity from his maternal side of the family that was from France, and that kept him from doing anything. His wife ran the show. Edward IV. Capitalizing on his father's successes in the War of the Roses, was able to take the English throne for the House of York, and through cunning and brutality was able to maintain his power. Solid. Edward V. Didn't get to reign long enough because his uncle basically starved him to death in the Tower of London with his brother. As for said uncle, Richard III never really had a chance. The English people never forgave him for basically killing his nephews, and why would they? And he was killed in battle 2 years later by this man, Henry VII, the winner of the War of the Roses, who held on to power and tried to do everything he could to maintain it while building up his cash flow. Definitely underrated. Henry VIII. The man, the myth, the legend, a larger-than-life figure who was a pretty nasty and awful human individual, was actually a pretty competent king when he wasn't spending all of the kingdom's money. Edward VI. Obviously could have brought the Protestant Reformation to new heights in England had he not died. Mary I. Similarly to her brother, had her religious exploits and social programs worked out, she would be considered a much more competent monarch. However, that goes to her sister, Elizabeth, England's greatest monarch, stabilized the monarchy, stabilized the religious issues, grew the economy, and started colonizing. There's not enough that can be said in one sentence. James I. Ruling over both England and Scotland, he was capable of keeping Parliament at arm's length while making significant contributions such as more settlements in the New World and the King James Bible. Charles I. Continuing to antagonize Parliament was not a good idea, led to a revolution which he was overthrown, one of the worst monarchs in English history. Charles II. Brought back the monarchy after 11 years, but continued to bicker with Parliament. Kind of meh. James II. Probably would have been a good king if he hadn't been Catholic and insisted upon bringing England back to Catholicism, which led to a bloodless coup where he didn't put up a fight. William and Mary. Good monarchs, to say the least. William, being the much more successful one, probably because he lived longer, basically let Parliament start calling the shots. Anne. Her greatest accomplishment was unifying England and Scotland under one rule, and this made it Great Britain, and she was actually pretty decent. George I. Brought to England from Hanover, Germany, in order to rule, he was hated by his subjects because he didn't speak any English. It was at this time that Parliament started creating more of a figurehead monarchy as constitutionalism took over. George II. The last English king to lead his forces into battle, was liked by the British because he tried to be one of them. George III. Gets a bad rap for losing the American colonies, but the foundations of the British Empire that would dominate so much of the globe were set during his reign. George IV. a party boy who really didn't want to rule, which was fine by Parliament, who was gaining more and more power. William IV ended slavery, but that was mainly Parliament's job, more of a figurehead than anything else, and basically signed over the last bit of monarchical power to Parliament during his reign. Victoria. When you have an age named after you, you are a great monarch, even if you're a figurehead. Perhaps the most recognizable monarch in British history, and perhaps the most lauded one. Edward VII. Another figurehead who stands in the shadow of his mother. His social activism is of note, however. George V. King of Britain and Emperor of India at the height of the British Empire, at the apex of its power, he had little to do with that, nor did he have much to do with them surviving World War I, but was a great and inspirational figure to his people. Edward VIII, the absolute opposite, during a time of turmoil, was only interested in his own carnal pursuits of marrying a divorcee, shocking how dare he, and basically supporting the Nazis, which I find to be a lot worse. George VI. Like his father, was a symbol of inspiration and hope at a difficult time during World War II, and his overcoming of his stammer made him that much more lovable. Elizabeth II. The epitome of prestige and calm, oversaw the end of the British Empire with grace and morality, and will never get over the problems with Princess Diana, however. Charles III. Has a horrible personal reputation and is trying to restore dignity, knows that he lives in the shadow of his mother, the longest reigning monarch in British history. We'll see what happens next. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed me telling you the stories of the British monarchs and summarizing them, hopefully as succinctly as I could in a sentence, sometimes two. Sorry about that. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, consider liking and subscribing and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian, and checking out my long-form content that drops every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like early access to my content and extra information, check out my Patreon and my social medias. I'm on Facebook, X, and Instagram. At the same time, you can also read my articles on Substack if you like my historical knowledge, but not necessarily my voice. Take care, I hope you have a great week ahead, and remember, love history.